Hi, this is Peter Purvis. You're listening to the Sirens of Audio. Hope you enjoy what you're going to hear.
G'day audiophiles, this is the Sirens of Audio, the show that explores the universe of Doctor Who in the audio medium. My name's Dwayne.
And my name is Philip. G'day Dwayne, g'day audiophiles.
G'day Philip. You know, sometimes I like to say, if not every time I like to say, we got a good show coming up for you this evening.
We have a great show coming up.
Sensational. We are going to be chatting with a legend of Doctor Who in the 60s, Maureen O'Brien. She also has done a lot for Big Finish and continues to do so. And it's a privilege and a pleasure to be able to share this with you now.
And it's also the first time she's done a podcast. So we're privileged enough to have her on her very first podcast.
Yes, what a privilege. Before we get into that, because I'm very keen to share this with you guys, Philip, there's one thing we got to do.
Yeah, what's that, Dwayne?
We got to jump down that rabbit hole. Let's go. Right, just a quick trip into the rabbit hole today, and I want to ask you about some of your memories of the 60s era of Doctor Who, in particular, the era of Vicki. So starting from Series 2, and some of your memories of seeing those episodes for the first time, because obviously as fans who grew up in the 70s and 80s, we didn't see the black and white era until we had seen all the 70s stuff, and then we went back. So what was the experience like for you seeing Vicki and that cast for the first time?
I remember the first time I saw Vicki was at Sydney University at a Doctor Who day. And there was some video program on. I forgot what we'd watched. We'd watched 4 episodes of something. And whoever was running the video program had left, and the video kept playing. And The Crusade episode 3 started to play.
Wow.
And that was the first time I had seen Vicki. I think I'd seen some other William Hartnell before then, but not much. But that was the first time. So it was episode 3 of The Crusade, and it started playing, and I was just enraptured by the performance. I once again, wonderful we got episode 1 back. Boy, I want these 4 episodes back, because it is just a masterpiece of acting and writing. In episode 3, you've got that huge fight between the King and Joanna.
Yes, that is the pivotal scene for me in that story. It is sensational.
Yeah, but you've also got Barbara being hunted down and her terror. It is just so well acted. And of course, you've got Maureen O'Brien being discovered to be a girl, not a boy, and other things like that. So that was my first time I saw Maureen O'Brien in that episode. A one-off, not connected with anything else, and I was in love. I just thought this era is just amazing. Now I can't remember from there on what Vicki I saw, but every time I saw a new story in that era, I just thought it just gets better. And even now, when I go back now and watch those William Hartnells, it just continues to improve in terms of generally the writing, the inventiveness, the way it grows. So Vicki in the Rescue is an amazingly strong character. So there's bits and pieces all through it, but yeah, certainly I adored her early on. And bit of a crush I've got on Vicki. What about you, Dwayne? What are your memories of Vicki?
You know, you mentioned, I thought my recollection of The Rescue, which is the first Vicki story I saw, I seem to recall seeing that at the university, Sydney University myself, at some point, and I can't remember if I did see it there or whether I saw it at someone's house who had the video. Remember when the cable channel in UK was screening all the black and white episodes, we would get videos sent over to Australia, and they were doing the rounds here. So it was that version of The Rescue that I saw, and what an amazing introduction story for a companion. It's still great to go back to that. Got the great soundtrack by Tristram Carey in The Rescue, which I love very much. And I think of course we had the original cast of Ian and Barbara. Then when they left, it was the Time Meddler was one of those stories that I saw for the first time. And I don't know if you remember, but that VHS copy that was doing the rounds, the UK station had cut the first couple of minutes off the Time Meddler. Do you remember that? So to make it a standalone, they didn't have any reference to the previous story. And of course, the Time Meddler starts with the Doctor and Vicki thinking that there was a Dalek hiding out the back when it was actually Stephen. So that bit was all cut out. So I never saw that at first. So there was all this mystery inside my head thinking, I wonder what that scene's like. And so when I first saw that scene for the first time, when it was eventually released on video, it was amazing. And I love the team of Vicki and Stephen too. I love those two together.
I still watch that scene. It still feels new because it was never there. Because I would have watched the Time Meddler over and over again without that bit. And so now... you had
that bit too?
I had that bit missing too.
That copy?
Yep. And so now when I put it on, that bit still feels like it's a rediscovered bit. But yeah, I think the Time Meddler would have been an early one I saw too. But the romance, she's magnificent in the romance. She's so funny and light-hearted.
Yep.
So, yeah, did some great story. I mean, Web Planet is a bit painful. But in terms of...
It's one of those ones you've got to be in the mood for.
Yeah, it's trying to be so inventive. And don't try and watch all episodes two at once. But I mean, The Chase, I think she's great in The Chase. The Mythmakers, I really want to see that. That's another one. But the Galaxy 4, the recent discoveries of there, which probably aren't that recent anymore, even that is still fresh to me and still seeing her performances.
And you can see that beautiful relationship between her and William Hartnell that they obviously had as friends. They worked so well together. You could tell that they really got on off screen as well. So that was nice, a bit of chemistry too. So yeah, some really exciting time in Doctor Who history for me as a fan.
Yeah, me as well.
Let's climb out of the rabbit hole. Now, one of the stories for Big Finish that Maureen O'Brien is very well known for is the very first companion chronicle that was released. Is that right?
That's right.
Yes, I was looking at your face and I thought, have I got that right? And I believe it was called Frostfire.
That's right.
I got that right too? Excellent.
You have.
Let's throw in a trailer for that and we'll be back in just a couple of minutes with Maureen O'Brien.
It's all right. It's only me. Vicki. Are you there? Oh, no, that's silly. Where else would you be? I'm coming down. Oh, oops. At first I thought the TARDIS scanner had gone wrong again. All it was showing was grey. But then dark shapes started appearing and I realised that it was just smoke drifting across. The Doctor was making adjustments to the console, muttering to himself in that half-amused, totally absorbed way he had whenever we arrived somewhere new. Stephen and I always had to take a back seat while this ritual went on. The Doctor finally announced that we'd need winter clothes and produced a set of thick coats and musty fur hats that he said were Russian. If that was the case, Stephen and I decided, Russia must smell absolutely disgusting. The Doctor tutted and said it was just mothballs, whatever they are, and then he opened the doors and out we went.
One of the first companions that we have in Doctor Who was Maureen O'Brien. She took over the role of after the Doctor's granddaughter Susan left and became the pivotal 60s companion. And so we're very proud and very pleased to welcome Maureen O'Brien. Maureen, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. I'm very happy. I'm happy to have actually achieved contact here with this Zoom. I think it's my second Zoom.
Well, you are doing brilliantly, so well done. Where are we speaking to you from, Maureen? Where are you?
Where am I speaking to you from? I'm speaking to you from France.
Yeah, lovely part of the world. Can
Yes.
you just tell us a little bit about where you were born and where you grew up, and then maybe a bit about drama school?
I'm a working class kid from Liverpool. I was born during the war in Liverpool. And just after the war, when my dad came back from Burma, we moved to a prefab. I don't know if you had prefabs in Australia, but we had these wonderful things after the war to house all the guys who came back from the war and had no money and nowhere to live. They built these little houses, which were absolutely wonderful, these houses. I mean, I remember it as tremendously big, of course, because I was very small. But it was a wonderful place to live. It was just on the just outside Liverpool, and built in what used to be farmland. So we had a big field. We had a huge main road, the East Lancashire Road, and then we had, on the other side of us, we had a big field and country lanes, and the village school was just a Victorian or even Georgian village school. So there were only 4 classrooms. And my friend Gladys Ford and I were the cleverest. And so we got pushed up the school very quickly and into the top class, which was what we called the 11 plus class. We were 8 years old. And this is the reason I'm so bad at maths or anything to do with numbers, because I walked into that top classroom and saw on the blackboard some incredible hieroglyphics. I don't know if it was long division or I couldn't tell you what it was. And I just stopped in my tracks and thought, oh, I've hit something I can't do. And this is terrifying. And but anyway, got over that. Went to grammar school, which was run by the Notre Dame nuns, Notre Dame High School, Mount Pleasant, right in the centre of Liverpool, just down the road from the Everyman Theatre, which was my first job after drama school, and a revolutionary new theatre. You know, that was very, very exciting. I was a founder member of that. Anyway, my school was fantastic. These women, the Notre Dame nuns, were, on the whole, absolutely wonderful. Highly intelligent, extremely democratic, wonderful teachers, and just great women. So we had a pretty good time at school. And Sybil Boddington, who was then Sister Therese of the Passion, started a drama society. And so my friend Judy Bennett and I were the sort of stars, I suppose, of that. She played all the blokes and I played the girls, and she was brilliant at the blokes. She played Darcy and I played Elizabeth. She played Macbeth and I played Lady Macbeth. You know, it's like that. And she was brilliant. And she now plays Shula in The Archers, which she's been doing ever since she left drama school, I think, more or less. You wouldn't know about The Archers probably in Australia. It's an everyday story of farming folk or country folk or whatever it is. Anyway, it's on every day on the radio, BBC. So when I left Mount Pleasant, I could have gone to university. I could have done European language and drama at Bristol University, and I was tempted by that. I could have gone to art school. And I suppose it was really because of Sybil, Sister Therese, that because she was so amazing. She was an inspiration to me and to Judy and to lots of other people, and remained my friend until she died a few years ago. So I applied for the Central School of Speech and Drama, which is where I wanted to go, and off I went. And I did the teaching course at Central because I did recognize that I was worse than a perfectionist. I was neurotically perfectionist. And that if I became an actor, I would only suffer because I would never live up to my own ideal of what I wanted to do. of course, I didn't realize at the time that I had no technique, and that's why I couldn't do a lot of what I wanted to do. You need an awful lot of technique to be a proper actor. And so I did the teaching course. More or less as soon as I got there, I immediately got a sense of proportion, and realized that this whole thing was a learning process, and I was being taught, I had great voice teachers, wonderful movement teaching, Alexander technique. Alexander was an Australian actor who invented this amazing technique for actors, because an actor on an opening night has the same nervous reactions as if he'd been engaged in a multiple car crash. And this guy knew what it was like to have to go on and be cool and looking marvelous, and everyone was thinking, oh, great, when your legs are shaking and you want to swallow your saliva and your heart's beating. So he developed this technique of strength through relaxation. So with Alexander, if you're putting effort into it, you're doing it wrong. And it does give you tremendous strength, and it does really give you extraordinary relaxation. And if you look at my early Doctor Who things, the thing I'm very struck by is I go, oh, she's got great posture, that girl. She does. She has this really perfect posture, and that's Alexander. That's what Alexander does for you. So that's what I was taught at Central, and I just thank my lucky stars, I've done an Alexander sort of workout every day of my life. And without it, I couldn't have carried on as a person or an actor or anything else. Absolutely wonderful. And later, I was lucky enough at Stratford, Ontario, to meet this wonderful guy called David Smuckler, who was a voice coach, mainly to opera singers. He was married to an opera singer, but for some reason, he spent a season at Stratford, Ontario, coaching us in voice through Alexander technique. And I went to him every day. He was absolutely wonderful. And because strangely at Central, voice was not taught by Alexander technique. It was all kinds of very rigid sort of teaching for voice. And I knew I wasn't using my real proper voice. I was using a very good stage voice, very good, especially for playing juveniles, which I did, of course, at the time. And so I totally threw away everything I'd been taught at Central about voice, and I started to relearn my vocal technique with him. And for the first time, I started to use my real voice on stage and to be totally relaxed and to be confident that my voice was filling, a theatre. And somebody, one review, I think, of when I was playing Imogen in Cymbeline, and we toured to Ottawa, I think, and one of the critics said, called me that tiny actress with the giant's voice. I was very thankful it wasn't the other way around. That giant actress with the tiny voice wouldn't have had the same ring to it somehow. So, well, I've got to Stratford, Ontario, which is 7 years after I left Central. So
one of the things that stands about you and actors of your generation is how well you speak. I guess we call it received pronunciation. Growing up in Liverpool, would that have been the accent you had, or did you have to teach yourself a whole new way of speaking, an accent?
Well, clearly I had a Liverpool accent, but in Liverpool they wouldn't have thought so. All my family, I'm the eldest of 8 children, and every single member of my family has a different accent. I mean, they're all Liverpool, of course, but everybody different, completely different. My brothers, in order to take on kind of protective covering, all those very, very, very thick with blackness like that, you couldn't understand a word he said, it was like that. And right through to quite sort of refined accents all over. It's really bizarre that people kind of chose their own accent. My accent was, to me, it wasn't an accent. I didn't know. until I got to Central and everyone started taking the piss because out of my accent, there I was. And I didn't care about that. I was proud of my accent and I was proud of being from Liverpool. I loved, I was very patriotic about Liverpool, not about England or Britain at all, but about Liverpool, yes. So we had this amazing, very, very old school voice teacher. I'm going to forget his name. Oh, God. No, that's the painter, isn't it? He was called Turner anyway, Mr. Turner. Clifford Turner? Oh, God, I can't remember. And
it was a while ago.
It was a while ago. And he had written, normally I'd remember, because I'm, so he used to take us for sort of speech class, voice and speech. He wrote a book called Voice and Speech in the Theatre. And it was full of exercises for standard English, like round and round the rugged rock, the ragged rascal ran. And so he gave us this particular day, he said, you must all speak received pronunciation all the time. Otherwise, you won't be able to do it. I said, what? You mean at coffee break and all to my friends and everything? He said, yes, indeed. And I said, well, I can't do that. That would just be lying. I mean, I don't speak like that. And he said, well, you must, or you will never be able to. So I said, look, received pronunciation is an accent, like any accent, like American or Scots or anything. And if I'm called upon to do it, I learn how to do it for that role and I do it. And he said, oh, I think not, Miss O'Brien. So he said, he gave me a passage to read and he said, read that in received pronunciation. Well, I got up looking very cool with my heart going like this, thinking, oh, God, I'm not going to be able to do this. So I read this passage and received pronunciation. And he, at the end of it, there was a pause. And I thought, oh, God. He said, Miss O'Brien, you may be the exception that proves the rule. So I got away with that. But when I left Central, I was quite determined not to lose my accent. But I was doing classical theatre. I joined I was a founder member of the Everyman Company, playing Ibsen and Shakespeare and then Goldoni just before I left, when I'd already been offered Doctor Who.
So how old are you starting this theatre up? How old are you when you started this?
21.
Wow, that's so young.
Well, it didn't seem all that young at the time, but of course it was. But my mother had a child by the time she was married at 19. She had a child and another one on the way at 21. I mean, it wasn't as young then as it is now, maybe.
No, my mother was married at 17 and she was born the same year as you.
As far as the accent goes, it sounds like you might have been a little bit ahead of your time because it's all the rage to have regional accents these days.
You are so right. I mean, I came in on the cusp, I went to Central in 1961 and the 60s hadn't begun then. They didn't begin until, 63 really or something.
64, yeah.
And, well, the Beatles really got famous. I mean, they were playing in the Cavern when I was at school. I knew nothing about them at all. I was such a culture snob at the time. I didn't know anything about them. So, but while I was at Central, they got really famous and we were all crazy about them. But yeah, I mean, and maybe the Beatles were part of that beginning, Suddenly it was okay to have working class lads with regional accents doing, strutting their stuff. It was okay. And, but in the theatre, I mean, when I went to Chichester, for instance, after after Doctor Who, after the Everyman, Doctor Who, and Oxford Playhouse, I then went to Chichester Festival Theatre, which is a very kind of bourgeois environment, really. I was very happy there because John Clements, the director, was wonderful and the people were great. But it was quite full of what I would call 50s actors, where everybody, I mean, didn't matter what level of society you came from, everybody was posh, and everybody was grand, and everybody said darling, and everybody, and everybody was beautifully coiffured and beautifully dressed, and the whole thing was, it was posh, you know. I felt at the same time I was very happy doing the acting. I did feel very out of place in a way. I didn't feel that I was in the right place at all. I only wanted to work at the Royal Court Theatre, which, you know, you must have. And they were doing really out on the edge modern plays or great productions of Shaw or Granville Barker or whatever, or Shakespeare even, but they were always with a modern edge. Everything was, it was a socialist theatre. It was founded by Granville Barker and George Bernard Shaw as a socialist theatre, and it was a theatre for everyone. It wasn't your average theatre setup, you know. So yes, I was quite out of my comfort zone, really, as an actor.
So after years of being in the theatre and in this environment, what made the decision for you to do some television?
Oh, television was much worse. I mean, television was, well, I don't know. There were people from, well, that's not quite true to say that. I mean, Dougie Camfield had a kind of a real London accent, and so did Dennis Spooner. There were sort of working class people there, but the general tone of it was so middle class. It was so the conversation, instead of being about, the conversation was all about, you know, what's the latest restaurant where everyone had to go, and latest hairdresser, and the latest. I was even more out of place in that. I couldn't cope with that at all. Terrifying.
So why did you go? Why did you go to television? What was the decision? Was it something that your agent wanted you to do? Did you just want to change?
No. While I was at Central on the teaching course, and they wouldn't let you change from the teaching course to the stage course. They made that very clear on our first day, a very powerful lecture. You will not change courses, you know, in midstream. You can't do that. You have to leave and reapply, you know. So that was absolutely dinned into me. You know, that was the rule, and you obeyed the rules. There was a revolution while I was at Central on the stage course, because Blatchley and Yat Malmgren, who ran the stage course, did not approve of the way voice was taught, and they were uncomfortable and there was a big split in the. I've learned all about this since. I didn't know at the time, and so Blatchley and Yat said to the students on the stage course, if 75% of you come with us, we'll set up our own drama school. And they did, and they set up Drama Centre. But this left very, very few people for the final year stage course, which was like a rep company. They just performed a play every month, I suppose, or something like that. All the agents came, everybody who was interested in new young talent and everything came to these productions. So they didn't have very many people left. Okay, at some point during my second year, they threatened to expel me from Central for being so bolshy. I didn't like the way a lot of things were taught, and I didn't think, you know, I was a bit bolshy, but I didn't think I was anything special. I was just normal for a Liverpool person. I was quite mild. And they had me in for a special meeting, and they said, and more or less, unless I started towing the line and keeping my mouth shut, I would be expelled. This is after I'd worked all this time to get this teaching diploma, which I didn't want because I was going to be an actor. But I thought, you know, I got my grant and I'm worked like mad. And I'm not going to give it up now, you know, at least it's a piece of paper at the end of the thing. And I'm, you know. So we had a wonderful teacher. He was an American called Harry Moore, an actor, ex-actor, I suppose, by then. And he used to take us for acting classes. He was absolutely wonderful, this guy. He wasn't like any of the other people. He was like an actor, you know. And he was American, so he had a different attitude to things. I remember him saying, because everyone had this idea of an actor, you know, and he said, just watch Marilyn Monroe, he said, because that's acting. That is wonderful acting. And if you want to know how to act, just watch that woman. We were all agape, you know, because she was utterly despised at that time. I mean, she was just a kind of sex symbol. You know, she wasn't considered an actress, I think, by anyone, really, certainly in England. That's not the reason people went to see her, particularly blokes. And so that's the kind of thing he said. I mean, he was really amazing. So at the end of this second year, when we'd done all our final performances and exams and things, and he said to me, you could be an actress, you know. Well, I was going to be an actress, and no question in my mind about it. And I said, oh, I thought I'd better not say that, because if it gets back to the bosses, I'll be expelled. So I better I'd already been keeping my mouth shut, which is not easy for me for almost a year. So I was, you know, I just said, oh, thanks. Thank you. And I was grateful for him saying it very. Anyway, when it got to the third year, we came back. I'm still on the teaching course. And an actress called Pauline Collins, a wonderful actress. Do you know her?
Yes, we do. Yeah, Shirley Valentine, other things, yes.
Yeah, she's from Liverpool too.
Yep.
She was a year or two older than me. God, what an actress she is. And she was someone I liked as well enormously at Central. She's a great person. So they'd asked her to rejoin a third year stage course. So she got to do all those performances for the final year, having left Central and already started trying to be an actress, being an actress. She came back, and there were only 6 people altogether, but they only had 1 woman. So now they had 2. So that's about the ratio, you know, male and female parts. And so Harry Moore said, I owe you an apology. I said, why? He said, well, I should have told you what they were thinking of doing. They wanted to ask you to go on to the stage course for the third year. And I was devastated. I was absolutely devastated. It's one of those moments in your life when you know that things could be, you know, there or there. And he said, I should have told. But I was sworn to secrecy, and you know, I tried to hint. Well, a hint to me, it's pointless. I don't get hints. I just don't get hints. And so I left Central without anyone ever having seen me do anything, which is quite a different position. So you know, no agents were trying to sign me up. No, I was just in the Everyman. Anyway, while I'm at the Everyman, there's a telegram from Harry Moore to say, chance of work on television. Call me. So I called him, and he told me about this part in this children's television series. I couldn't have been less interested in television. I mean, most of us at that time just thought television was, oh God, you know, it was just rubbish. I mean, theatre was what you did. Theatre was what you wanted to do. And I have changed my my attitude to that 100%. But so I said, but Harry, I've already got a job. He said, don't be silly, darling. You know, because actors are always looking for the next job. I wasn't. I was wonderfully happy at the Everyman. I was so happy. We'd started rehearsing Goldoni's Servant to Two Masters with Richard Digby Day, and it was my first really leading role, and I was just so happy. I said, I'm really happy here, and I don't. And he said, well, look, they want to see you. Why not come up to London, and I'll choose a piece and I'll coach you. So I chose a piece from Member of the Wedding by Carson McCullers, and worked on it, and went up to London, and Harry coached me wonderfully. He was a great teacher. And then I went to see Verity, or maybe I went to see Verity, and then I came back to do the screen test or something. I can't remember. And I'm offered the role, which I never expected to be offered the role. It was just a lark, really. So then I had to decide. All the other actors were saying, you've got to do it. You've got to do it. What are you doing? You're working here for £6 a week. And, you know, you'll get at least £100 a week, and you'll be, you know, it's absolutely fantastic opportunity. You know, you've got to do it. None of that meant a thing to me. I was perfectly happy. I was living at home because it was Liverpool, and £6 a week was what I'd had more or less as my student grant. I could live on that quite easily. Anyway, I never went anywhere. I just worked all the time at the Everyman. However, my husband, he wasn't then my husband, but Michael was in London, where we met. You know, we'd been together already for about a year, and I desperately wanted to be with him. And so I thought, well, it'll get me to London, so I better do it. So that's how I joined Doctor Who.
Well, it's very excited. Were you aware of the show at all, or it wasn't?
No, I didn't. We didn't have a television at home. My mother wouldn't allow it. She said, the minute a television comes up that garden path, I go down it, she said. And she said, children should be making things and creating things and doing things, not sitting there in front of a goggle box.
People say the same thing today too.
I agree with her.
Yeah,
absolutely, 100%. But of course, once I was on Doctor Who, and my little brothers especially were given the most terrible time at school by their classmates. You know, just because your sister's on the telly every Saturday, you think you're great, you know, and all that. Wow. And they got it from the teachers as well. You know, they were really, it was really torture for them. And the other kids were watching me every Saturday, and they couldn't. So my mum had to give in and get a telly, and I'm really sorry about that.
So what was it like when you arrived in London and met the cast? And I mean, I guess that was the first time you met all of them, William Russell.
That was all fine, but it was a job, you know. I'd vaguely heard of this children's television series called Doctor Who. That's all I knew about it. I didn't know it had this big cult following. I didn't know it was terrific. I didn't know it was news, you know. Well, I did by the time I started, but it didn't seem to make any difference to me. It was just a job, and I went and met everyone. The nicest thing was Carol Ann Ford turned up on my first day at rehearsal to say good luck and have a good time. You know, I had a great time. It was very sweet. Such a lovely thing to do.
It's a lovely thing to do.
Yeah. And I finally, we worked together finally. We've just crossed paths a bit, you know, over the years, but we'd never really done any proper stuff together until about 6-8 months ago. We did a thing. And she's an absolute delight. She's just wonderful. She's she looks younger than Springtime. She's, you know, she was a dancer before she was an actress, and that's her training. So she's tremendously graceful and lithe, and you know, she's fantastic. So I met everyone, and I suppose I was terrified. But once we started, because in those days we used to rehearse, you know, all this. We used to rehearse for a week in funny sort of territorial army halls and things like that all over West London. And then at the end of the week, we would go into the studio where we got the huge, big video cameras that trundled about, and spend one day in the studio rehearsing with the cameras, and then perform the whole thing in the evening. So it was utterly different from what it is now. But because we rehearsed together for a week with nobody else there, you know, the director and the actors. And in the middle of the week, the producer, the director, the producer and the head of the camera crew and the sound man and all those people would come and follow us around the rehearsal room as we performed the whole thing for them without camera. And they would then have a meeting about it. And if they wanted anything changed, well, you know, we would incorporate that. And then we went into the studio on, Peter Purvis says it was Friday, but I swear it was Saturday. Anyway, I'm sure he's right. He knows much more about it than I do. And so because you work like that, you are a family. You work very closely, you get to know each other very well. You spend all day, every day together, apart from the weekend. And you're all very pleased to see each other when you meet. And you also have guest artists coming in every 4 weeks. So the family expands and contracts and gets new blood and visitors, and, you know, it's fun. That's nice, all that. It was very enjoyable, very enjoyable. Lovely.
There's a pretty grueling schedule in terms of, you know, a half an hour television program every week, the lines to learn. You were young? Did you find that it was actually not too bad for you, but others were struggling, or it was just a passion you got into?
Nobody was struggling. Well, maybe some of the guest artists were struggling because they weren't used to the rhythm. Me, on my first day or two, the others did one rehearsal and they knew the lines. Bill Hartnell, Bill Russell, and Jackie just knew the lines after one rehearsal. And I thought, I'm used to having my script with me until a few days before you open, you know, and I don't like to throw it away because then you spend all your concentration on remembering instead of on acting it. So I thought, I'm not going to be able to do this. This is not going to be possible for me. At the Everyman, we had 6 weeks rehearsal. And because we were doing several plays, so you'd work half a day on this one, half a day on that one. And I just thought it's hopeless. I won't be able to do it. But by the third day, I knew the lines. And by the second week, I was just like the others. I knew the lines on the second day. And actually, my lines were not that complicated, you know.
Did you find you needed to change technique much? Because your technique was theatre, so it was all about being big, projecting to the back of the theatre. Is television technique, was it much different?
It didn't seem so to me. The thing is, acting is acting, you know. You're playing a character. You're playing all the thoughts and the feelings and the actions of that character. It seems to me you just adapt to whatever medium it is without thinking about it, really. I mean, I did think this is a doddle, you know. You don't have to project to the back of the theatre. You can just, if the camera's on you, you just have to think something and it gets it. You you don't have to exaggerate, and it was very comfortable. The others all used to wish each other luck on just before the recording, you know. They'd all say break a leg and all that and be nervous. I thought, what's the matter with them? It's only television. There's no audience or anything. They're worried about, you know, this is just like any other time we've done it, you know, it's just got cameras on it. So I was very unfazed by it, and I'm now extremely grateful because I had a year, whatever it was, 10 months, of just being relaxed, of learning how to work with a camera and in a studio. And, well, it was a training. It was just training. And it was wonderful to get that opportunity at that age, you know.
Were you socialising much with Bill and Jackie? Did you do much outside, or was it just very much work? You went to work, you did work, you went home.
We worked together all week. We went home in the evenings to our separate homes. Socialised a bit with Bill Hartnell. Michael and I would go off to the East End to these wonderful Chinese restaurants. He loved a Chinese meal, and these wonderful restaurants, real authentic Chinese in the East End, along the docks, Wapping docks and all that, in the East End of London. And so we'd take him down there, and we'd go into a pub, you know, to have a drink before going to the restaurant, and we never got him out. Well, we would get him out, but it was very, very late, because everyone would be mobbing him, you know. Everyone adored him so much, and he loved that. He was in his element, having a drink with all the fans in the pub, and it was, so they were lovely, those evenings. But we didn't do it that often, maybe 4 or 5 times, something like that.
Did you find you were being mobbed much when you went out? Were people noticing you and coming up to you?
Oh, yes, of course. Oh, God, of course. I mean, well, the news broke before, when I was offered the role. If it hadn't been like this, maybe I'd have been all right with it. But the news broke before the BBC meant it to break. And suddenly we had the press and all the journalists outside the window of our flat, and they were banging on the window and shouting and calling. They were calling on the phone all the time. They were banging on the neighbors' doors and asking questions, you know, do you know anything about her and what's she like and all that. And we had the curtains drawn tight, and we were crouched on the floor of our living room like babes in the wood. I mean, it was really terrifying, horrifying. And not only that, but the BBC were blaming me for having broken this news. Me. I didn't even know it was news to break. And I blamed the Everyman. I thought the Everyman must have let it out. And they said, not at all, O'Brien. We wouldn't do a thing like that. And it turned out to be my poor innocent parents who'd been rung by the Liverpool Echo saying, is it true your daughter's playing the new companion in Doctor Who? And they said, oh, yeah. And so then it was out. So it was so Michael and I used to climb. There was no back. It was a big red brick block of flats in West Hampstead, and we were on the ground floor. We had to. There was no back exit, so we had to climb out of the back window and go running along the back of the building and down the other end, and then run for the bus, because you know, all the journalists didn't know about that. So we never actually. We managed not to speak to anyone. But then I was on the front page of all the newspapers, and but it was a big shock to me. I mean, I had no conception of such appalling behavior. I just had no. And then I'd be sitting on the tube, on the underground, with someone, you know, as far away from me as this computer screen is now, talking about me. You know, it's her. No, it isn't. Yeah, it is. It's her off Doctor Who. No, it isn't. Yeah, it is. It's her. And I'm sitting there. I'm actually a very private person, very shy, and I couldn't. It seemed to remove me from the human race, you know. from everyone around me. I was kind of removed. I was this special thing, you know. And of course, the thing I liked to do most in my life was watch other people. Naturally, I'm a writer and I'm an actor, and that's what I do, what I've always done. And I couldn't do that anymore because everyone was watching me. So I hated it.
Wow. I'm not sure if you're aware, but Big Finish have recently recast the First Doctor with a new actor, and they're really focusing on the mannerisms of Bill, the intonations, and even injecting fluffs into the scripts that he's famous for. But Philip and I have had discussions, and I know myself personally, I'm convinced that Bill was putting some of those fluffs in there purposefully as part of his character. What's your experience of that? Do you have any memories of that?
No way. No way. No. Who are these people who are doing this?
Stephen Noonan is the name of the actor, and it's Big Finish who are putting it out.
Oh, it's Big Finish doing it. So it's audio.
Yes, it is, and it's absolutely brilliant. He's got Bill Hartnell down pat.
Oh, I've got to find out about this because they're all my friends at Big Finish. I love Big Finish. Oh my God. Oh, how extraordinary. No, but no way did he do it on purpose. I mean, Bill, I think he was a wonderful actor, and I think he was an extraordinary eccentric man of whom I was deeply fond. And we were very close while I was working on it. But words of more than 2 syllables were more or less interchangeable, I think. And I shouldn't really say that. It's a terrible thing to say, but, you know, on my very first episode, we were going out of the spaceship or whatever it was that I was living on this planet. And I'd agreed to go along with them because I had no one else. And so they said, why don't you come along with us? And I said, yes, I'd like to do that. So he rescued me from this. And as we were going out, he was supposed to say to me, this will be your first exploration, my dear. And he said, this will be your first exploitation, my dear. And the whole studio just broke up. I mean, and I have a feeling we very seldom did a retake because in those days it's such an enormous thing to do. It was a bit like doing it live, you know. But maybe we did retake that. I don't know. I can't remember that. I just remember, you know, crying with laughter and trying not to because of Bill's feelings. But it was often very, very funny. But no, he certainly didn't do it on purpose. Absolutely not.
So when Bill Russell and Jackie decided to leave, what was the feeling in terms of amongst the cast?
Oh, well, I mean, sadness. And for Bill, I think it was breaking his heart, really. This was his family, you know. He'd been doing it then for how many years? 3, 4?
2 years. Yeah, it was the end of the second year.
Well, it was just the second year. Well, it's a long time for actors to work together, you know.
And every week.
In a little company like that.
Yeah.
And so he was really heartbroken. He was angry, and he was heartbroken. I think he just couldn't bear it. We did a story which part of which took place on the roof of the Empire State Building. You know,
The Chase. Yep.
Yes. Okay. And Peter Purvis came in just to play this kind of crazy Texan on the roof of the Empire State Building. And he did it wonderfully. It was wonderful. It was very, very funny, outrageous, extremely funny. And he got on like a house on fire with us, with Bill Hartnell, with the rest of us. And he was generally very good news. And Bill really liked him, and he loved his performance. He really reckoned him as an actor. And this was very important with Bill. He needed to respect his co-workers as actors, you know. And he was delighted with Peter. And we were talking one day, Russell and Jackie and I, about Bill's terrible upset at them leaving, and they felt very bad about it, of course. And we were talking about who on earth could replace them, you know, because they were going for one young man. And I don't know whose idea it was, but one of us said, what about that guy who played the Texan? Bill really liked him. He was really good. He got on well with Bill, especially. They would laughed and laughed together. So why didn't we suggest it? So I think Russell and Jackie suggested it to Verity, and Verity took it from there, proposed it to Bill, and Bill said, yes. And he started to cheer up. And so from that moment, he started to accept that Russell and Jackie were going, but he had this, you know, new blood to look forward to, and it was, I make him sound like a vampire, wasn't like. Anyway, he was so happy when as soon as that was suggested, and he, you know, and he had full approval and all that, and it was great from then on. And he got on wonderfully well with Peter, and Peter just fitted in, you know, as he already had, actually. Yeah.
Did the cast tend to mix a lot with the production crew, you know, like Verity? Did you have a lot to do with her?
We would often all go out to lunch together. And I can remember going for dinner at Verity's place. She had this lovely Muse house in kind of Knightsbridge, near Knightsbridge. Yeah, I mean, Verity was very good like that. She was a really good producer. She kept things in the family. She kept things together. She was very sociable herself, and she was, you know, she like that. Yeah. Yes, we did do that. It's true. I'd forgotten about that.
So you did a few shows with Peter Purvis, and then the decision to leave, it sounds like it wasn't quite your decision. It sounded like you were ready to go, but was it part of your Bolshoi personality?
Comme ci, comme ça, as we say around here. I was desperate to leave. I loved being with my fellow actors and all that. But this constantly being recognized and accosted business, I really hated. And the role, really, you know, in terms of acting, come on. Oh, doctor, what is it? Oh, I'm so frightened, doctor. Really, I just couldn't. I couldn't bear it. And I used to try and fight to get more. I used to go to the script meetings and say, look, this is for kids. Kids are not stupid, you know, they're bright. And I used to think of all those Liverpool kids and me in Liverpool and my brothers and sisters, and they'd be going, you know, who is this ditz of a girl? She didn't seem to have any sense of humor, any brains, or any initiative, or, you know, I injected as much of that as I could. But I wouldn't say the scripts exactly went along with it. They weren't really writing for the kind of Vicki that I was. And anyway, well, that I was trying to be or would have liked to be. I wanted to be a real, proper, feisty, real girl, you know, not this wimp. And so I just felt I really, really want to go. But I still hadn't made any moves about that. And then, oh God, the wonderful exec producer, Canadian guy.
Sydney.
Sidney Newman.
Sidney Newman. I adored Sidney Newman, and he liked me. But he clearly didn't much like my appearance in Doctor Who. Well, it didn't suit him. And just before a studio day, he came down to the studio with Verity, and he said, Maureen, how would you feel about changing your hair in this role? And I said, changing my hair? To what? And he said, well, maybe dye it dark, cut it. I said, Sydney, I'm going to change my hair when I leave Doctor Who, not while I'm in it. He went, okay. And I said, and anyway, if you want someone with short, dark hair, why don't you get Carol Ann back? Which I'm sure he would have liked. I think Carol Ann was absolutely his idea of what the girl should be, And so, as I say, I don't take a hint very well. So I had no idea that this was a kind of end of job interview, Clearly what it was, because we had our 6-week summer break. And Peter Purvis will tell you better than me how it happened. I don't know. But at some point, I thought, I had the script of the Trojan script, But then there were no more scripts came. And normally we'd have them, I suppose, a few weeks early. And I said to Pete, have you got your next scripts yet? And he said, yes. And I said, oh, I haven't. And then I realized, of course, when Menelaus says to Vicki at the end of that story, oh, Vicki, that's a very silly name. We can't have you called that. I will call you Cressida. And, there was Troy and we'd fallen in love. And it was all, and so they left me there. It was a very, very good ending for me. But I hadn't had any warning about it. But I was a bit miffed that nobody had discussed it with me, but I suppose that was Sydney's way of discussing it with me. And I was relieved. I was very relieved. And I remember the first time I got off a train at West Hampstead and a woman drew alongside me, walking, and she said, aren't you Vicki in Doctor Who? And I said, no, I'm not. But you are, I know, you must be. I said, no, I'm not. That's great. So that was my, and years later, when I was at Stratford, Ontario, and Sydney had gone back to Canada, we met by accident on the roof of the Park Plaza Hotel in Toronto. I was meeting Michael there to have a drink and then go out to eat. And I was working in Toronto for CBC at the time. And so we had a drink with Sydney. It was great. I was so pleased. He was pleased to see me and I was pleased to see him. We had a great evening. And he said to Michael, Michael, there were just 2 things wrong with your wife in that role. He said, for that role, you need 2 things. You need to have tits and be able to scream on cue. And he said, your wife had no tits and she could only scream with the right motivation. By that time, I was playing the leading roles at Stratford, Ontario, the top theatre in Canada. So I was very happy with that. He was a very funny man, Sydney, and very, he was very nice, actually. I liked him a lot.
When you left then, did you think that you were leaving Doctor Who behind? Did you have any idea that it would keep coming back to haunt you?
No. thought I was leaving it behind, but I suppose I ought to have known. It would go on and on. And now I'm extremely grateful to it, since it's the only way I get any employment at all now that I'm, older than the hills. And, Big Finish really is what saved me. By the time I was living here, and my husband was ill, and things got very difficult. And I couldn't travel like I used to. I couldn't just go back to do a telly and then come, I had to curtail my visits to very short. And those CDs for Big Finish are just brilliant. You do them in a day. Yep. And in maybe 2 days, maybe 3. But anyway, it was brilliant. So as well as doing audiobooks and other audio recordings, I was doing these brilliant scripts. There's such good scripts for Big Finish, and the people are so nice. And
well, can we talk about? I mean, I'd love to still cover. I mean, you've got that whole period when you left Doctor Who. You've got. I mean, I know you did a bit of teaching in terms of trying to get some work, but you went back to the theatre. You did lots of different television bits and pieces. You did work overseas. Your whole theatre background came back again. But yeah, in 2007, you came to Big Finish. How was it that you ended up back at to Big Finish? How did that happen?
No idea. Nick Briggs asked me to do a companion chronicles.
Before that, I think there's a story called a Doctor Who story called The Year of the Pig. Dwayne?
Yeah, I was actually just listening to that today. A story called.
I played that very fat lady.
Yes.
I played a very fat lady. If you're allowed to say anybody's fat these days, probably not. But anyway, she was a big woman, as we might say, and I had trouble getting around. Yes, I had to sound like that.
The name was Alice Bultitude, so it was a very big name too.
There's a man in a deck chair with a huge pile of books, all wrapped in brown paper. He's not exactly dressed for the beach. Spats the colour of a poison bottle, yellow trousers, striped.
Like a humbug.
And he's eating a piece of cake.
What kind?
Battenberg. It matches the pattern of his waistcoat.
I'm the Doctor.
Fascinating. I pride myself on my knowledge of the theatrical profession and its allied arts.
Do you?
And yet your nom de guerre is not familiar to me.
Well, my work has been a little further afield.
The colonies.
Frequently.
I knew a girl who kissed like you. Marie Lefebvre, the trunk murderess of Saint-Germain, strangled her victims with the cord of her silk dressing gown, but they all went happily to the grave.
The telescope has detected him.
It can't be, surely.
Who else?
But we took such care.
Our persecutor has iron determination. He's a monster. There's no other word for it. The Doctor is here, and he's come to stick me.
And I don't remember much about it except having a very good time with all the people, and it was very funny, I seem to recall. And what was it to do with Doctor Who? It wasn't, was it? Was it to do with Doctor Who?
Yes, it was a sixth Doctor so you had Colin Baker as the Doctor, Nicola Bryant was the companion. And yeah, it was set in 1913, and I think it was all about a little sapient pig called Toby. So very, very intricate script, and I don't know whether it was refreshing for you to play someone in Doctor Who that wasn't Vicki. So that was a bit of a change for you.
I suppose it was. Yes, it didn't matter that it was a Doctor Who, because from 1969, Martin Jenkins, who'd given me my first job at the Everyman, he was the founder of the Everyman Theatre with Peter James and Terry Hams. And I'd seen him a lot as a student actor and director in Liverpool. Comes from, not Liverpool, but Merseyside, comes from Birkenhead, the other side of the river. And I used to go and watch all his productions at the university. He was amazing. He was clearly a great actor and a great director. And anyway, he ended up directing plays for radio plays for the BBC. And he offered me my first radio play. So my first job in the theatre and my first radio play. in 1969, just before I went to Canada. And when I came back, I continued then to work in radio. And radio became my absolute favorite medium. I mean, I adore radio. I adore doing audiobooks. I adore anything audio. I just absolutely love. Because you can do anything. It doesn't matter that I'm only, knee high to the leg of a grasshopper. It doesn't matter that I'm what I look like. I can play anything. I can play Madame Pulchritude or whatever, and hope that people will believe it. And generally they sort of do. And so I've had the most wonderful time doing radio. So for me, it's just like doing radio. So the Big Finish things are right up my street, whether I'm playing Vicki in various periods of existence, or whether I'm playing something else.
Fleet engagement of Dalek attack force, proceeding according to minimum success parameters.
We're winning, but we've lost too many ships to press home our victory. Would you say that was a fair analysis?
Reinforcing the fleet would represent a clear advantage.
Lieutenant Carlyle.
Operations here, General.
I want you to order the reserve flotilla out of Kedru 7 orbit. They are to join the main fleet's attack.
That'll leave Kedru 7 open.
There are no other Dalek forces in this sector. Kedru 7 doesn't need defending, but the main fleet needs reinforcements if we are to press home our victory. Carry out my order, please, Lieutenant Carlyle.
Yes, General. This is Mission Control Platform to Kedru 7 Reserve Flotilla. New orders immediate. Set course for main fleet engagement.
So one of the first things you did with Big Finish was a Dalek Empire series where you were playing a fairly tough, strong general type. Do you
I remember that, yes. Oh, yes, ruler of the planet or something, yeah. Oh,
That's right. So you did a lot of unusual things to start off with at Big Finish.
Yes. And then suddenly I was playing Vicki all the time. I think Frostfire was the first.
It was.
Was it?
It was.
Yeah. I loved that. I thought it was a beautiful script. And I was doing it with a dear old friend, Keith Drinkle. We did a lot of radio together, and we also did James Joyce's only play, Exiles, at Bristol Old Vic, which was a wonderful production. And Keith also lives in France now. Not a million miles from here, but a few hundred miles from here. And they have their own recording studio, and they're doing all sorts of stuff like that. So we're in touch still. It's very nice. Yeah.
Now, were you happy to come back to start? Because you've been playing a lot of Vicki in different roles. Were you happy to come back to play Vicki?
Darling, when there's no work anywhere and you're living hundreds of miles away, 1,000 miles away, and you can't move anywhere. I was very restricted in these last years. And so somebody offers you a job, you just go, yeah. And Big Finish are not just offering you a job, they're offering you really, really good scripts. Wonderful scripts, some of them. I wish I could remember the names of things, but I never have been able to, and I can't. But Vicki, I had to play Vicki at like 15, the time of my first episode, right through various ages through her life, right through to 102 or something, I forget. And I can't remember the writer's name either. It's the most one of the most wonderful scripts I've ever worked on. And
was it the crash of the UK 201?
Maybe.
By
yes.
Jonathan Norris?
Yes, that's him. He is so brilliant. I mean, okay, Doctor Who is a space time machine. And that's used in all kinds of ways. You go to another planet at a different time, and on it goes. But this guy, in this script, Vicki starts trying to change the course of events. She can choose to go back to a certain place. She chooses that her father shouldn't die in that crash. and then she chooses something, and then terrible other things happen as the life goes on. And it absolutely, your mind starts really, well, the top of your head starts coming off, because coping with that idea, you change one thing in some unspecified time, and then 20 years later, that series of events has unfolded, and then you try to change that because it's bad, and it changes to something worse, and it's wonderful, 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 great piece of writing. And of course the acting was a hell of a challenge, because going from little girl Vicki to playing the sort of middle years is most difficult. You can play the old one and play the young ones, but there's sort of middling ones. How do you go from 30 to 40s to 50 to 70? Actually, I don't think your voice changes that much, but you've got to do something to show that. So that was it was great working on that.
When we spoke to Jonathan Morris, he actually mentioned that story and your performance in it as one of the highlights, because we love it's one of the ones that stands out in terms of your performances. It was such an amazing script, and of course, the whole timey-wimey stuff and what you did was wonderful.
Oh, thanks! I'm so pleased. It was a real, it was a script you really had to live up to. You couldn't fail it.
Vicki, are you awake?
Vicki, you're still in bed.
Father!
Coming soon from Big Finish Productions. Doctor Who, The Early Adventures, The Crash of UK 201.
Then this is it. The day it happened.
When what happened?
The crash?
But what has happened to Vicki? She's been sent back through her personal time to a point earlier in her life.
It's one of the crew, a man called Bennett. He did it. He killed everyone.
A stowaway? And a murderer?
I had nothing to do with that man's death.
Hull temperature critical.
Adjusting trajectory.
Entering ionosphere.
Look, you just have to stop the ship now, please, before it's too late.
Good luck, my boy. Good luck.
Big Finish. We love stories.
What am I supposed to do now? Stephen! Stephen!
What was it like getting back together again with Peter Purvis and people in the studio?
Oh, it's just fun, like it always was. It's great fun. And recently we did a Doctor Who event in London. And, oh no, it wasn't. Was it the one in Sheffield? It was the one in Sheffield. We did one. And we were doing what they call a panel, where we both sit on a sofa and answer questions. And there weren't many questions, I think, because you know what Peter's like. And now me too, yak. It's wonderful because we're reminiscing. We always have a different view of our time on Doctor Who, and often we have the same view, like we're both deeply fond of Bill Hartnell, for example. But, we each tell a slightly different angle of the story. And so it's really great. It's great. It was a good panel. Several people came afterwards to get things signed, and said, that's the best panel for years. It was really fun.
Your stories come from so long ago that people just don't know that period and they're still fascinated by it.
I always say I'm the Lillian Gish of, television. Black and white, tiny little screen like this. Everything fuzzy. Yes.
So how do you find working against Peter Purvis playing not only Stephen but the Doctor as well? What's that like to work with in studio?
Well, he's wonderful at doing Bill. I mean, he really is good. I mean, I've had to do Bill as well in some of those scripts. And I found doing Jackie very, very difficult. I really have never been able to get Jackie's. It was a beautiful voice. It was a very distinctive voice. And her rhythms and everything, and I never, ever could. I suppose because I was acting with her a lot. I don't know. She was such an adorable woman and such a good actress, and I would love to be able to do justice to her voice on those scripts, but I never felt I did at all. I could do Bill quite well, but that's by really copying what Peter did.
Yeah.
Because Peter has certain little ways of doing it, and it's very, very good. And I did follow his path quite a lot when I had to play Bill Hartnell. No, I think he does it brilliantly, absolutely brilliantly. I mean, sometimes you're standing in a booth, you're recording each in separate booths for Big Finish, and so we'd be in separate booths. And sometimes I just couldn't believe my ears, I'd think that Bill Hartnell was standing there. I'd have to take a quick look to see if it was really Peter.
Now, you've also done some work with Bill Russell as well. He came back to do some audios.
Oh, yes. I must get in touch. When I go back to London, I must get in touch and see how he is. I mean, his son is a Hollywood actor now. I mean, Bill Russell is so youthful. He's remained youthful right until the last time I saw him, which is a couple of years ago now. Absolutely wonderful. You'd never believe he's the age he is, whatever that is, but it's older than he's always looked. And such an adorable person as well.
So have you got more work coming up that you know of? Or you've just finished some work? Have you got some more coming up?
No, I haven't at the moment. Somebody tried to discuss something with me this morning, and I couldn't because I was getting nervous about this. So I don't know anything about it. It's something I don't know.
Now, you've also, so I was going to say, you've written a number of books. Are you still doing any writing, or you've given up a bit of writing now?
No, it was impossible the last few years, but also my editor, absolutely, I had been her favorite writer, she said, and I believe that to be true, through 6 books, and then the 7th book she loathed, and she rejected it, and I was devastated. I didn't understand it. I always showed my books first to Michael. I mean, I worked on them for 2 years before I showed them to anyone. And then I showed to Michael when I thought I'd got it as good as I could. And then Michael would give me very, very good notes. And then I would show it to my agent. And Michael said, "This is fantastic. This is a new departure. This is really great." And my agent said exactly the same words. "This is a new departure. This is really great." So when Hilary, my editor, turned it down, I was devastated. And it meant that she now didn't have a book, the book that she was supposed to produce for her company, for her publisher, for Little Brown. She no longer had it. She was in a dreadful fix. So I said, I've got a book in the kind of bottom drawer, which I've never finished, and maybe I could get that out. I told her about it. Maybe I could resurrect it and update it and do that. So I did update it, and now wish I hadn't. I wish I'd left it in the period it was written. It was written in the, God knows when I started writing. I was 40 years old or something. Anyway, well, when I started writing books, I'd been writing plays all my life up to that point. But my first book was when I was about 40, I think. And so I resurrected that book, and that became my last book. I think it's called Every Step You Take. And I like it. I like this book very much. I'm very fond of it. Wish I hadn't updated it. But and Hilary was very glad to have a book to, present when she quite quickly. But I, having done that, I found I'd fallen off the perch. I'd fallen off the tightrope. I went on writing. I wrote 2 more books, I think. And but I was like a headless chicken, right? I was just writing like you cut the head off a chicken, it still runs around the yard. And everything had just turned to mud on the page, it just didn't come off the page. I just couldn't do it anymore. I lost my confidence. And so I think about it a lot, I do think about it, but I don't know if I've got anything to say anymore.
Well, I know that you seem to have felt that Vicki went around saying, "Oh, doctor, help me," and screamed a lot. That's certainly not the view that most fans have of Vicki. I think Vicki ushered in a whole new generation of companion. She was a lot stronger. She was sort of the first 60s hip girl. And people certainly enjoyed your performance back then. And even now, people go back and look at your performance and are just thrilled by what you've done. And I'm thrilled that you're still producing work and there's more to come. So looking forward to hearing what's in store for Maureen O'Brien.
Thank you so much, both of you. It's lovely. I really enjoyed it. And I never expect to enjoy these things, but I have enjoyed it very much. And I am also very aware that that people really like Vicki. And when I look back now at those, bits of those stories, I really did manage to inject much more than I thought at the time of a personality, a proper person. At the time, I felt I was just being a wimp, but in fact, I injected quite a lot of humor, and also I noticed in a bit of she starts to get kind of bolshy in a teenager sort of way at a certain point. She's going, "Oh, I don't know, I don't care," and I thought, "Oh, that's very good. I never was aware that I did that, but that's quite good." I am quite impressed with that younger self doing it. I'm not at all ashamed of what I did. I'm really quite touched by it, and quite. You do see it as a different person. You don't see it as you. You just see this young kid starting out on a career, and you kind of sit back and say, "Well, she's quite good, she's not bad, right?" And it's.
You really lit up the screen lots of times. The Romans, the whole Romans episode is just, every time you're on screen, you and Bill Hartnell together are just so funny. And the way you bounce off each other. The Crusade, the way that you play the page boy, that's just so much humour in that. You lead a revolution in this Space Museum. Vicki has an awful lot to do. I think far more than you probably give her credit for.
Yes.
And your performance is sensational.
Now. I do agree with you now. Absolutely. At the time, I couldn't see it. Have you seen a bit of the Crusades then?
There's 2 episodes that still exist. So
I'd like to see that, because that was one of my favourite.
It is magnificent. It's Shakespeare. It is just the language, the scripting is just beautiful. You and William Hartnell. You're playing the page boy at the beginning. You become Joanna's confidant later on. The way there's a scene between Joanna and Richard. So of course played by
Jean Marsh and Julian Glover. They're sensational in that.
Like that, it is the most.
Julian Glover and the wonderful
Jean Marsh.
Yeah.
And it was just.
I loved them. We loved each other. We met. We remained friends ever since. They were so wonderful to me, and I can remember them saying, you're a real actress. You'll do greater things after this.
Yeah.
And that was so comforting, and you know, they were really, really sweet to me. And I loved playing all that. It was good, wasn't it? But I've never seen it, and I would. It's the one.
I can't believe no one's ever shown it to you, because it's.
I may have it here, no, somewhere.
Right.
I may have it here. It's possible. I never have watched it.
I think one of the episodes was only discovered about 10 years ago in New Zealand, right. I think.
Yep.
So it's only quite fresh. And
it's all available on audio. So, I mean, I know it all because of listening on audio to it all. And it's like a radio play in many ways. I mean, that being said, the subtlety of the acting, and as I said, William Hartnell's performance is just amazing, and you're playing off him, and the way you feed him is just it's great.
Yeah, I mean, acting with Bill was always wonderful, and I, as an actor, I do like to act with people. For all that I've won awards for solo things, solo radio things and audiobooks and all that, and I do like doing that. But the real joy of acting is acting with people. And the better the actor, the more joy there is in that. And a friend, this is rather boasting now, but a friend of mine, Nick Amo, who died a couple of years ago, aged 93 or something like that. A wonderful actor, a wonderful teacher. And he saw me in something on television. And he called me and he said, there's lots of nice things, but he said, "You're so transitive, darling." Transitive. It's the most wonderful word, A transitive verb is a verb that takes an object. So you lift the cup, you close the book, you don't lie on the floor. Or see what I mean? It's a directness and a contact with whatever the object or the other subject is. So I could not have a better compliment than that. That is my idea of acting. And so that's why it was wonderful to act with Bill, because he really was Doctor Who. When you were working with him, that was Doctor Who. It wasn't Bill Hartnell. It was just, you deal with the eyes, and you were dealing with the eyes of Doctor Who. I mean, he was incredible, I think. What he invented, what he created.
Did you see him much after you left?
Hardly at all. Once or twice, we had a drink, went to the pub and had a drink and a laugh, but mostly no. But that's what it's like in our business. You work with people, you can work with people for a long time, And when the job's finished, you might keep in touch, but mostly you don't. If I'd worked with Bill on other things, say we'd done 2 other things together, then we would have been totally friends, and it was my experience working in the theatre, getting very close to someone, and you think, oh, I'll be definitely calling this person, they'll be calling me. No, you didn't. But when you worked together 3 times in the theatre, then you were friends for life. Other people may be different, but that's me. I'm very diffident about, following up on things. But that was always my experience.
Actually, I meant to ask you that docudrama that they made at the 50th anniversary time that David Bradley was portraying William Hartnell. What did you think of that?
I hated it.
Did you?
Yeah, I absolutely hated it. Because it depicted Bill as this miserable, bad-tempered, grumpy, awful person, and he wasn't. we laughed all day. I mean, he lost his temper every day about something, you know, and I laughed him out of it, and you know, that was my sort of role. And but it wasn't serious, and it wasn't. He was full of energy and he was full of energy and passion and jokes, and he was playful, and he was a character, you know, he was a great character, but he wasn't this. Oh, I hated it so much.
Has going back to Big Finish and reconnecting with Peter Purvis and William Russell, is that cemented things differently then because of that?
No, it's just the same with Peter. We never, when we meet, and we've met constantly over the years, we used to socialize quite a lot with Peter and his first wife, even during Doctor Who. But every time we've met, ever since, and we've met over the years regularly, but not usually totally by arrangement. If one of us was in the theatre, if I was in the theatre, Peter would come and see the play, or if something, you know, it was like that, meeting, things to do with Doctor Who and all. It's as though we were still working on Doctor Who, we're exactly as we always were. But we live in different worlds. I mean, he lived in the world of Blue Peter and Crufts and things like that. And he lives in the country and breeds dogs. And I was, you know, always a London girl until we came here. And well, Liverpool and then London, but, you know, London for 50 years. So so we live in different worlds, but we get on like a house on fire. And not only that, but this event in Sheffield, I'm sorry, I'm just boring on now.
That's lovely, it's wonderful, thank you.
This event in Sheffield where we did this great panel, Peter and I, lots of people from other eras of Doctor Who were there. Sophie Aldrin, Katie Manning, Colin, several other people. I'm now too many to. And it just turned into a party. We just had this amazing party. And all the people who attended the event were having their photographs taken with us. And when I have my photograph taken, because it's quite tiring all day long, you know, having your photograph taken, especially when you don't really like having your photograph taken, I always go, cheese. And so I started doing that. And somebody started harmonizing with me and someone else. And so in the end, we were this choir, this sort of Doctor Who choir, all singing cheese, you know. And then we started finding out the name of the fan and singing Davy, like that, or Phoebe. And so it was just this big party with this choir. It was lovely. It was great. So you have such a lot of history in common that it's very easy, you know.
Listen, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. It was really, really great. I enjoyed it.
Lovely talking to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Oh, you were right, Doctor. It's cold. Yes, well, of course it's cold. It's snowing. Oh, dear, dear, dear.
Coming soon from Big Finish Productions. Doctor Who, The Early Adventures, The Dalek Occupation of Winter.
Where are we, Doctor?
The ship doesn't appear to know, my dear. Whatever this planet is, it's on the edge of the galaxy, and its icy temperatures make it inimical to civilized life.
Once again, we gather on this day in our calendar to not only celebrate the achievements of our finest academy of young people, but also to recognize the hopes and dreams that shall be carried forward within them.
Doctor, he's talking as if the graduates will never be seen again.
Why does the graduate not step forward?
Out of my way! That's my brother!
Identify yourselves!
then the Dalek must have personal access to the leading figure of the city, and therefore this planet. It doesn't bode well, does it?
Dalek forces must be replenished. City productivity must increase by 5%.
These Daleks, where are the insides?
Stephen! They're magnificent. Even greater than I'd imagined.
Big Finish. We love stories.
Majorian! Ah, hello again, Mr. Ambassador. Nuts.
Philip, that was amazing.
Yeah, she's an amazing woman, isn't she?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad we could put her at ease and get her through her first podcast. That was good.
She would have talked for another hour easily if she, she was just so relaxed and so much enjoying it. And
lovely lady.
Maybe we get her back sometime because I'd love to have talk with her more about life, universe, and everything.
Of course, yeah, that'd be great. I hope you enjoyed it too, guys. So it was a privilege and a pleasure to bring that to you. So thanks for watching and listening. We're going to go to our recommendations for this week. And of course, we all know by now whose turn it is. It's never anyone else's turn but Philip's.
Here I go. Thank you for that. I'm going to strangely recommend a Maureen O'Brien story. I knew you weren't seeing that coming.
No.
It's one that we talked about a bit with her just then. It's one of the early adventures called The Crash of the UK 201. So it's actually Maureen O'Brien playing her own age, in one sense, where she has the opportunity to affect time and stop the crash from happening that killed her father. And so it's a whole moral dilemma. It works at so many different levels. By Jonathan Morris, friend of the podcast. But it really is, it's quite timey-wimey, but it really deals with the issue of if you could save a parent, would you? And what would be the consequences for the universe, if you're a friend of Doctor Who, if you did that. So it works on several different levels. Maureen O'Brien is just spectacular. Peter Purvis is just wonderful as well. That team just works. And if you love The Rescue, you'll love this because it just intersects so cleverly with that storyline as well. So that's my recommendation, Dwayne.
Excellent.
Okay, Dwayne, well, that was great. Thanks for sharing that. Now, what about you? What's your recommendation?
Well, you're not going to believe this, Philip, but on a previous episode, you recommended a podcast, which I found intriguing. So I actually went and looked it up.
You actually listened to something I actually talked about. Gee, that's nice to know.
I did. It works. It really works. The podcast that you recommended was called Cautionary Tales, and they were interviewing someone on there from a different podcast, which really appealed to me. So it's a podcast called Bad Women, The Ripper Retold. And it is looking at the Jack the Ripper case from a completely different angle. Rather than looking at the crimes themselves, it's looking at the history of the victims. So I haven't listened to all the episodes yet, but they go through each one of the victims.
Do we know much about the victims? They've found lots of...
I'm going to find out. I'm going to find out because I am very intrigued, always been intrigued by Jack the Ripper, and always interested in hearing what theories they have and whatnot. So I am going to delve into this. I'm just looking on my Spotify now and noticing I put it on as I was going to sleep last night. I must have listened to 5 minutes of episode 1 and it's gone through to about episode 4. So I have to go back to the start. That never happens, does it?
Never to me.
So that's Bad Women, The Ripper Retold. That's my recommendation.
Thanks for that, Dwayne. It's great.
All right, a fabulous episode, if we do say so ourselves, Philip. And thanks for joining me once again, and look forward to the next time.
See you all later. Thanks for all your files. See you, Dwayne.
See ya. This has been the Sirens of Audio, episode 110, A Woman Ahead of Her Time, with our very special guest, Maureen O'Brien, and your hosts, Philip Edney and Dwayne Bunny. Theme music by Joe Kramer. Contact us or check out all our details at sirensofaudio.com. Send us some audio feedback via anchor.fm/sirensofaudio. You can drop us a line at sirensofaudio@gmail.com or drop us a comment. We love interacting with you. Thanks for listening, audiophiles. We'll catch you next time.